was walking home from school, and he and Harry, it was Friday. It was a Friday. It was February 5th, 1999, and they were walking home from school like they did every day, except this day there was snow on the ground, and they were having a snowball fight. And Chris went to cross the street without looking, and somebody visiting one of our neighbors hit it. I was waiting at home. I was at home. I had you three, your brother, your two brothers, and you, and then I babysat a little baby. And we were waiting for them to come home. You guys were playing in the living room. Because he had the sniffles and didn't feel well. So he was sleeping on the couch, which I was so angry that he was staying home that day. I was just so mad at him because he didn't suck it up and go to work. And thank goodness he was home. Harry knocked on my door, and that was another. And I opened the door, and everything started in slow motion from that day, because Harry informed, he said, in the words, Chris has been hit by a car, and everything went into slow-mo. I took off running because I could see him. He was probably, he was across the street, one house over, laying in the middle of the street. And I could see him from my front door. And like I said, it was February. I took off running. I did not have shoes on. I had my socks on. I did not have shoes on, nor did I have a coat. And I thought for a moment, and I turned around and yelled at your dad to wake up. Chris has been hit by a car. And I took off running, and he was laying in the middle of the street, and he was not conscious. My first instinct was to try and get him to wake up. So I started talking to him, and he finally woke up, and he tried to sit up, and I wouldn't let him because I didn't know where he was hurt. He didn't have any. There was no signs that he was hurt. He didn't have any blood on his face, or there wasn't, he didn't look like he was hurt. And then I heard the sirens, and I was trying to keep him calm and telling him that the ambulance is coming, and he has to lay still until they get there. And they're coming for him. They are really close, really close. And the principal of Sylvan, who was Mr. Greaser at the time, he had come over because the crossing guards had told him what had happened. And so he had come over and was helping, trying to keep things calm, which was the big help because I was not calm. And so in the meantime, while we were waiting for the ambulance, one of my neighbors came over to stay with you kids, and so that Dad could come down. And he came down, and my neighbor across the street came here and got my shoes and got my coat. So I put my shoes on when my socks were sopping wet because it was February and everything was slushy and snowy. And finally the ambulance got there, and they started cutting his clothes off because they didn't know where he was hurt. And he was crying, and it was February, so it's cold out, and they're cutting my baby's clothes off, and he's laying in the middle of the street in his underwear. And but they loaded him up into the ambulance, put all the they have braces on him and everything, and they loaded him up in the ambulance, and then your dad came back here and waited for Grandma and Grandpa to get here so that he could meet me at the hospital without you guys, and we were on our way to the hospital. ICU for probably about 5 days, and then he stayed in the hospital an additional 2 days, and then came home.
And he's alive now.
And he is alive. he is alive, and we had to see, he had to go back and follow up appointments. We had to see the orthopedist to make sure that his collarbone healed correctly. Officer Dave came and visited him. He was the police officer that came, so he came over and they had their own little tutorial about how it is to cross the street and why we do it at the corner and all of that good stuff. So,
Thanks,
yeah.
Mom.
You're welcome.